everybody. It's time for another digital diary. And I am Georgia Stull. I'm from Missouri. And with me, we have Karen Farnsworth. She's also from Missouri. Paige Johnson, she's from Minnesota. And Christine Perigo, she's from Colorado. We're from different parts of the US, but we are here today to talk to you a little bit about designing patterns using CreativeStudio. It gives us that ability to create or modify our own patterns. And I think we're going to start out today with Paige showing us some examples of what she has done.
Okay, I'm going to open up a PowerPoint. So I'm going to screen share here.
All right.
Okay, so I love CreativeStudio for working with designs. I've owned other designing programs, but CreativeStudio is the easiest for me to use. One of the things that I'll start with is the quilt and where I want to put designs. Now on this piece, there is 2 blocks here. And the only thing where the quilting is really going to show is in this white area. So I'm going to start my designing by putting something into the areas that are going to show. I like to make blueprints, and all this is a boundary that I can place designs over. Now, I literally started with patterns that I already own, and I took chunks of them. Like I took this piece, I took this piece, and look what I did. I moved it out so it literally comes into the next block. And this was another piece. I can then put them together to create blocks. And this is how this showed up after it was quilted. You can see that I have the same design here as I do here, but it's only going to show if the fabric allows it. That's probably the most way I use CreativeStudio, is altering the patterns that I already own. This is a good place to put in copyright because I chopped up other people's patterns and put them together. This is not an original and I cannot sell this, but I can certainly use it on my quilts.
I was going to ask you, Paige, how many different patterns did you chop up? Do you remember?
There were 4 in that.
Okay.
I'm going to go back. This was one, and then I think it just had a single plume up here, and I changed that. And I did put them together so they sewed like blocks, but one block intersected with the other. But there's 4 parent patterns. When you save a pattern, it will show you what the parents are. And if you drew it by clicking out arcs or draw a curve, it's going to say not found, meaning probably that you created it from scratch.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the copyright issue, because that's just something that's really important to me, you know, as a designer that sells patterns. And we're going to talk about selling patterns in a bit, but it is really important. Some people don't realize that you can't take something, even a part of somebody else's work, reconfigure it, and then try to sell it or give it away. Most designers are fine if you use those patterns for the quilts that you're quilting for customers or yourself, just like the way you used it, Paige. But they're not okay with you, you know, then giving that pattern to somebody else or trying to sell it. So yeah, just be mindful if you're creating patterns, you know, for our viewers, if you're creating or altering patterns, just be mindful that it doesn't mean that you can do what you like with that pattern.
Okay, well, here's another one, and we'll talk about copyright on this too. This is a quilt that was just finished. It's going into the Minnesota Quilt Show. But this black border really shows up. And what I did was I made a design from the fabric itself. And this is a Jenny Buyer. And I pretty much I couldn't actually copy it, but what I did do is I made a design that was inspired by it. And so here I did contact Jenny Beyer and told her that I'd made this design and sent pictures. I haven't heard anything back. I don't intend to sell it unless I do have permission, but I am using it on my own quilt. And I did tell her the Jenny Beyer border print here is something that is highly recognizable. And I did that on the bottom here as well. You can see it's close enough. It's not an exact copy, it's inspired by, but this is not an original design. So I feel the copyright ideals still fit. So I can't sell this, but I have the ability to make it. And that's the best part of CreativeStudio. Here's another thing that I've done. I have a panel and I wanted to design a quilt layout. So I did that in CreativeStudio and I put my grid on 1 inch. And so these are going to be finished at 1 inch. And the numbers represent the number, like this vase is only 1 vase. It's going to go here. The 3 is going to go here. So the sky's the limit with what you can do with designing, not just patterns, but other things as well.
Well, and the best part, it's already in CreativeStudio. Once you get ready to quilt it, you can go do your layout right over the top.
Yep, what I'm going to do is I'll just turn all of these patterns into a boundary and I'm ready to go. So obviously I have a lot of fun with this. I like designing in CreativeStudio more so than piecing. I like quilting.
I think it's fun. And I just did recently a quick little graduation quilt using that. I had the fabric, okay, now what's going to go where, and did it all in CreativeStudio just to get ready for the piecing. It was awesome.
Cool. I love this topic. I think so designing is one of my passions. I like not just like creating the designs in CreativeStudio, which you can like start to finish. You can create a pattern using the draw tools, like draw line, draw arc, draw curve, but you can also just make those modifications, little ones or big ones, like Paige was showing, to make the patterns that you already own like perfect for the quilt you're working on. So that's the power of CreativeStudio.
One of the things I do is I like symmetry. Some people don't, but if I have a pattern that was either free or I purchased that's not exactly symmetric, I can take it in half and mirror it so that it is then symmetric.
And I'll admit, a lot of times what I do is maybe I need a motif and it's part of an edge to edge that I own. I'm not going to go out and look and buy that motif. I'm just going to take it out of something that I already have to use in a quilt. I do that probably the most is, you know, something like that, or maybe enlarge a flower or a curl to fill the space a little better for those wonky quilts, you know, but it works. And I love that it's in our hands and we have that ability to do that.
Yeah, you just have to practice with it. It's like anything. And we've got a number of ways for you to learn this stuff. Huh. So does somebody want to talk about how do I learn this more in-depth designing? One way, I guess, would be to get educator consult with somebody like Karen that does it all the time.
Yeah, those are good for, the consults are great for like very specific questions about, well, any topic, but of course today we're talking about designing patterns. So if somebody's working on learning designing skills and they have specific questions, a consult is perfect because you can just get that direct advice. But we also have great classes on Gammill Education. In fact, we were kind of doing a review before this, and we saw several, 4 or 5 classes on Gammill Education that people might want to check out, that all specifically address creating patterns in CreativeStudio, both altering and drawing from scratch. So actually, maybe I'll share my screen and we can look, because I had that website pulled up.
I like the pretty pictures too.
Well, it's easier to remember when you see things. So this is actually Gammill.com, and then in the owner's portal and going to the education tab, you can see all of the paid education that you can sign up for, these classes that you can choose from. What were some of the ones?
Some of them, almost all of them have some use of draw tools, don't they? I know even my apply class has some draw tools in it.
Right. Okay. Because the draw tools in CreativeStudio are so powerful, and they do so many things, not just creating patterns or changing them, but we literally use the draw tools to place text, or we use it to place patterns with, well, here's Paige's draw pattern class. But I know, Christine, you mentioned your Simple Clicks, this class right here, Simple Clicks Powerful Tools.
Yep. So in that class, we start from scratch and create a whole bunch of fairly simple looking designs, patterns, and then use a lot of the power tools that CreativeStudio gives us to make them into something more than just simple little clicks.
That's a great class. I learned a lot watching you do that one.
We've got Pattern Designer 101, which literally, this is my class that is literally hey, if you want to learn how to create patterns from scratch, start to finish, including testing the designs, and if you're interested, selling the patterns. We haven't talked about that yet, but anybody who wants to create a designer account with Gammill can sell patterns on Pattern Cloud. Of course, those patterns, any patterns you want to sell through Gammill, or anybody else actually, will have to be your own original work. But this class talks about that. I think we had a couple more in here, specific classes. There was one that was geared to Elevate owners, actually. Jody's Let's Start Simple also talks about just the very basic draw tools in CreativeStudio and creating basic patterns. And I think everybody knows that Jody's really good with those modern, minimalist, clean designs. And this, like I said, this class is geared toward Elevate owners, but it would pertain to anybody that wants to use CreativeStudio to design patterns. And then we've got Gina's Design Patterns class. And this one covers a whole bunch of topics and a whole bunch of the features that you might use when designing patterns, like circular array or mirror. Paige talked about using mirror as she's designing or redesigning patterns.
I love circular array.
There are just
really like
fun.
It is, and it's useful for a lot of things, and for designing patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, as much as I like designing little bits of patterns and modifying patterns, everybody who takes classes with me knows my favorite thing is to design my credit card. So I love that the cloud makes it so easy to find patterns. For one thing, it lets me know if I've already bought a pattern. That's one of the best things ever, because sometimes I'm looking at patterns and I think I love it and I buy it, but I forgot that I buy it and I try to buy it again. It goes, oh, you've already bought that. And so it protects me, but I can build a wish list if I'm sitting in a doctor's office and want to look through the website and find some things, but I don't really want to deal with buying it then. I can buy it later. It's so fast and easy for me as a user to just design my credit card and have it go right into my account.
I love the wish list.
Right.
And to find that thing again is really hard.
I know. That's
thousands.
How many thousands of patterns? Exactly. And then the other plus is, let's say I put something in the wish list because I'm working on a tablet, but I'm not totally sure it's going to work with my quilt. Well, I can go home and pull up CreativeStudio and pull up the store and bring that pattern out and put it right on a picture, use it, quote, to see how it will look, and then decide if I want to purchase it. So that's even better, because sometimes I know in the past I bought patterns that looked like they would work, but not really when I got down to it. And if I had been able to do that years ago, I would have known that's not going to work and I wouldn't have spent my money. So
virtual quilting, it is invaluable.
Well, especially if you don't like to put it in and go, that doesn't work, and rip it back out. I don't want to do that. I'd much rather see it on the screen, because you can usually tell from the screen whether it's going to work or not. So buying on the cloud is quick, easy, and it works for me more than developing my own patterns. So,
well, and I know, Paige, in a lot of your classes, you also talk about modifying patterns that are just edge to edge designs, where you pull the rows together to make the gap in between rows appear less obvious.
Yeah, that's in my
simple modifications. Yeah, but like that, our CreativeStudio makes it so much easier.
Yep.
I think the key is that like CreativeStudio gives us that power to really customize things. So whether we're making those small adjustments that make it make the rows nest better, like you were just talking about, or whether we are taking a design and pulling out one element and putting something else in to make it custom for what the customer requested, or whether we're starting from scratch because we've got this brilliant idea of a pattern that we want for a quilt or a pattern to sell. We can use CreativeStudio for all of those things to design or change the patterns that we already have.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely love it.
Yep. I love CreativeStudio. I have from the very beginning, and it only gets better all the time.
Okay, I would love to show, I'm going to take my turn and do a screen share really quick because I want to show just one example. All right, we see CreativeStudio there?
We do.
Okay, so this is just one example. Yeah, just one
I love these notes.
of gosh, a way that you can just customize a pattern. So again, this, I mean, you have to watch those copyright issues. I'm going to say, so this is somebody else's design. Actually, this is my design, but let's say you, the viewer, were like, this is actually a real life story from last week. This is from my quilting journey or my quilting story last week. The customer chose this pattern from my website and said, I love the gnomes. The quilt that I'm bringing you to quilt is for a gift for a customer, and they love gnomes. It's their favorite thing, but it's a baby boy and they're not really into the flowers. So could you take the flower out and put something else there? And I'm like, yeah, I can, because CreativeStudio lets us do that. So it's as simple as, I like to put it in repeats so I can see how everything relates. Take one of the repeats, the center repeat, and then just take one piece out by using nodes and divide out the part that I don't want. And my lines are pretty thick, so let's see if I can choose the right. So it's that simple to choose that flower. Get rid of that. I can delete it or just move it out of the way. And then I stole this leaf from a different design, right? A set of leaves. And you just plug it in to that pattern. And of course you have to make the connections, you know, snap the endpoints and make sure that the pattern is continuous. Use order join and things like that. And of course we're not going to show the whole process, but it's that fast to customize that design. You can upcharge if you want, or, you know, it's just one of those services that distinguishes you, you know, from the competition.
Exactly. Yep. I love the little snail on it on top. Took me a second. I'm like, what is that? Oh, it's a cute little snail.
Yeah. So customer was thrilled. It only took me literally a matter of minutes. Of course, then I would just, you know, get rid of these pieces and make sure everything was connected, order joined, and save this as a new design.
And you totally have a new design.
Yeah.
Adding and subtracting elements is a great way to expand your library.
Yeah. That's usually the only kind I do, that and taking pieces out to use somewhere else. Like that flower, if I wanted that kind of flower and I remembered it was in Karen's pattern and I had it, then that's what I do. Those kind of
That's a great
things.
flower.
Yeah, it's perfect.
So anyway, yep, I think everybody should just play with the draw tools. let me stop share here.
Well, I think we have covered a lot of information in this episode of Digital Diary. Anybody have anything else to add?
No, you just gotta play with it.
That's what I was gonna say. I'd encourage anybody that has a little bit of desire to create to just play with it. Play with it.
And nodes are absolutely the best.
Oh, they are. They are. Like, how could we make it without nodes? Because we so can change a stitching line, and it's just like having the thread, and now you can move it into a different place. So, well, I hope everybody's enjoyed this episode of Digital Diary. We'll be back again with you. Happy quilting.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.